the spiraling thoughts that really affect sleep. Yeah,
Mm.
what are some of the things that you experience around anxiety with your clients?
Mm. Um, One little hiccup is that you were just frozen for me, but you're fine. You're back. Yeah, that's a great starting point, I think. For sure, the physical symptoms are things that I think finally give people the like flag of, okay, this is anxiety, or that this is worth now talking to somebody or getting some help. Because I think a
Mm,
lot of people are just really used to the like racing thoughts or the sort of worst case thinking or the like catastrophizing. Some people might have been doing that their whole lives and kind of just think that's normal. Like that's just the way I think. That's just the way everybody thinks. Like
mhm,
the sort of critical voice in your head, the sort of like drive to be better, that's kind of more coming from a negative place. If I'm not good enough or I need to be a certain amount of X, Y, and Z. So I feel like when it comes to more physical symptoms, it gives people a little more tangible evidence that, oh, this is maybe not okay. Like my body is reacting to this in a way that tells me it's not healthy for me. Like sleep is certainly one that I think, like struggling to go to sleep and then also having kind of like light, not deep, not good quality sleep, I think is like
mhm.
I've had people describe that you just kind of feel like you're processing through the night, like your brain is never really quiet. Um, and so I think that yeah, it has so much negative impact on your physical health. And then the thing that, the way I talk about it with people too is it's like a vicious cycle. Then you're not in a place to manage the awake anxiety, the sort of challenging of the thoughts or sort of holding things in a more kind of calm or rational way when you're tired, when you're sleep deprived, when you're worn out from some of those experiences. So definitely, I think sleep is like such an important thing to be figuring out, like what's in the way, what are the reasons that it's not good, and anxiety is yeah a big culprit for why people struggle with it.
Yeah, I really like how you touched on the multi-dimensional aspect of anxiety and how, even when you're sleeping, you might not get the quality of sleep or the so-called deeper REM sleep. I'm not a specialist in sleep, so I might have gotten that wrong. But really the fact that it it gets us to the point where we're kind of always processing and not really able to rest.
Yeah.
And I also appreciate you mentioning the part about, because we don't get sleep, that also affects our mood and thoughts and
Yeah.
everything else that comes with it. I think a lot of times when I'm dealing with clients, it's at first it's about the CBT stuff, like kind of like cognitive distortions and kind of trying to um, come up with alternative ways of speaking to ourselves. And I kind of like this whole idea of speaking to ourselves neutrally as opposed to
Mm,
going to the extreme of saying, like, let's be peppy and happy. If you're
mm,
anxious, you're most likely not going to feel like,
right,
rainbows and butterflies and unicorns.
right.
And so maybe instead it's kind of like, okay, this feels really uncomfortable. Um, and I'm going to start by identifying like the physical sensations in my body as opposed to judging myself.
Yeah. Oh, that's so powerful. I really like the talking to yourself neutrally and just sort of trying to build more awareness of the anxiety itself rather than trying to like challenge or go to another extreme. I have had clients feedback like if we identify, oh, there's this negative voice that's like really self-critical, really also maybe sometimes rooted in like trauma. There's like trauma that's like given birth to some of those beliefs about themselves or their self-worth, right? Like there's a really deeply rooted negative self-belief. It's too radical to try to challenge it. It's too dissonant, right? Like it just doesn't make sense to just be trying to challenge it, even if there's some part of their brain or there's some part of their belief system that wants to. It's just like too far away to do that. So I really like the talking neutrally to yourself piece that you highlighted, where that is just going to feel a little easier, like less alien, like less weird and uncomfortable. And then, yeah, maybe there's like a super end goal someday where there's a positive self sort of voice and identity. But certainly to sort of just start with like noticing it and then thinking about like just poking at it rather than trying to like throw it out the window, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I like that idea of like kind of poking at it and kind of coming maybe morphing it into a way that kind of feels comfortable to you as opposed to changing it to this really extreme degree.
Yeah.
Uh Another thing that I kind of see in my clients is with anxiety comes the sense of urgency. There's this need to kind of fix everything all at once. Um, and it's tricky because the anxious voice can be so powerful and it makes us think that if we don't solve it right now, the whole world is going to end, but kind of telling yourself, okay, how can I kind of tolerate this discomfort? And it's most likely not going to go away. And I think that's the tricky part about anxiety, that it's not something that we can just kind of cure and it's going to go
Yeah.
away forever. And it's more so, how can we kind of deal with this in tidbits, or how can we deal with it as though it's like a lower level, a lower frequency, or if you think of like turning down the dial a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I do get that from clients too who are wanting sort of the reassurance from me or wanting some sort of, yeah, something to like, it feels so bad. It feels so heavy. It feels so draining to be anxious and sort of sitting with and accepting the idea that maybe the most that we're going to do, especially in a short amount of time, right? Like some of these things are really long-term work. But that the goal is to turn down the dial, not to be silent. Because I also do work with sort of an acceptance framework where like anxiety comes from a protective place. Like it's not helpful or it's not usually productive for us, but it's coming from a helpful protective drive like mechanism. And so to have some compassion, which again sometimes can be too radical. I think even the word compassion is like, I've had people be like, that's too much. Like I can't imagine having compassion for something that I hate so much, that I like, you know, really, really cannot stand and like has really destructive impact. But if there's room for some acceptance that, okay, it lives for a reason, it's served you in some of these ways, it's maybe not going to go away. We just try to work alongside. We like turn the dial down so it's not so loud and in control. Like we want you to be in control. We don't want the anxiety to be in control. But certainly we have room for it to exist. And there are times where it's helpful, like it's energizing, it's productive, it's, you know, it's all those like things that to the extreme become really destructive and really tiring. But yes, I feel like there's room for some space, you know, of like, yeah, it's gonna be there. Like it's gonna sit there a little bit quieter. Um, but it's, yeah, it's not, we're not trying to like get rid of it completely. We're not trying to like kill it off.
Mhm.
It's part of you. That kind of sort of framework is helpful sometimes. Yeah.
I love that idea of kind of, for some of your clients, it can be scary to have compassion for the anxiety.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's kind of like making space for the anxiety to sit next to us,
Yes.
and it also having like a function. Like I kind of think about how in the past, like I've talked about this a lot, how sometimes it's like if we think about caveman, woman, person times,
Yeah.
we needed to have anxiety to escape from the bear, because if we have anxiety, we have fear, and then we can
Yeah.
run away and protect
Yeah.
ourselves. It's just that nowadays we don't have this so-called bear.
For sure. The threats are not the same as they were back when we developed as we
Mhm,
are, and those mechanisms still kick in, and those mechanisms still create the same like adrenaline and like stress in our bodies, and
mhm,
it's not necessary. Like we can identify that, okay, it's bigger than it needs to be. Like that's what we have in modern day called anxiety, and called sort of the adverse way of being, but that, yeah, it comes from these like mechanisms, that they existed for a reason, they still have some purpose, they still have some function, and we just want to be more in control of it. We want to be more aware of what's happening in our bodies, and what can we do to make it fit more realistically to what's happening, right? What the threat is, or what the perceived threat is. And that, yeah, I think when you said like fear, I thought like adrenaline, like that adrenaline boost. Like adrenaline is helpful, right? It does all these like wild things of, you can lift cars and you can do all this like intense stuff, but do we need to be doing that every day for like small things, you know? And also that it leaves us like drained and tired and exhausted
mhm.
to be experiencing that level of like activation. So yeah, no, totally, to be kind of using the historic sort of origin and reason for why these mechanisms exist, and that modern day we can be more in control of it. We don't need to be sort of, there's no bear. There's no bear in the same way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And we don't have to function off adrenaline, because over a period of time, that's pretty unhealthy. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that idea. This
Yeah.
seems like a perfect place for us to end today. And